Hello everyone, this video will be covering ISA 260, which is communication with those charged with governance. Before diving into the details of the standard, you first have to understand who are those charged with governance. The auditor within the governance structure of the organization must determine the appropriate person to whom he or she might communicate the key matters relating to audit. So, those charged with governance in any organization may include the person responsible for overseeing the strategic direction of the entity, ensuring the accountability of the entity, overseeing the financial reporting, or in a listed or public sector organization, might be the member of governance board or any management personnel who have an executive responsibility for conducting the operations of that organization. Or in a small entities, it might be the owner or the manager of that entity. Now moving on towards the scope of the ISA 260. ISA 260 sets out the principles on how the auditor is responsible to communicate the key matters relating the audit that he or she is conducting to those charged with governance. It doesn't only apply to the audit of the financial statements, but it might also be adopted for the audits of the other historical financial statements. ISA 260 emphasizes the two-way communication. It provides a framework on what and how a communication might or may be done between auditor and those charged with governance of the organization. The objectives of the ISA 260 includes the communication of the significant audit findings to those charged with governance, obtain the relevant information from those charged with governance and management. ISA 260 is actually here promoting the two-way communication between the auditor and the organization to gain maximum information and to provide a clearer audit report. One of the objectives is to communicate the responsibility of the auditor and to set out and communicate the planned scope and timing of the audit. Now let's just see in detail what will be the communication process. It starts by establishing the form of communication, the timing of communication, and the general contents that will be communicated. Now, what will be the forms of communication? Written communication is preferable, as oral communication is not adequate in auditor's professional judgment. So, written communication will be very much essential for significant audit findings. And the auditor shall also communicate the auditor's independence in writing whenever required. All the communication shall be done on timely basis so that appropriate actions can be taken. Now lastly, the adequacy of the communication process. The auditor will be responsible for the two-way communication to be adequate for the audit purposes. Auditor have to assess the risk of material misstatements and consider the impact of obtaining the sufficient audit evidence. Now, what will be the matters that will be communicated to those charged with governance by the auditor mentioned in ISA 260? Auditor's responsibilities. One of the major matters that the auditor must communicate are the responsibilities of the auditor, and these responsibilities must be communicated in written form. Then comes the scope and timing of the audit. The scope, key areas of focus, and the timing of the audit shall be communicated to the management so that management know when and what will be. Now what will be the matters. Let's discuss the matters that are to be communicated with those charged with governance by the auditor. First and the most important one is the auditor's responsibility. The, all the auditor's responsibilities in relation to the audit of the financial statements must be communicated to the management and those charged with governance, as the audit of the financial statements that is being performed by that auditor. Those financial statements are prepared by the management over the side of those charged with governance. There's auditor's responsibility with relation to those financial statements audit must be communicated to them. Second most important one is planned scope and timing of the audit. Planned scope and timing of the audit and the overview of the audit processes must be communicated to the management, as it will help those charged with governance to understand how the audit will be performed and what will be the key areas of focus. Another important matter to be communicated are the significant findings from the audit. The auditor might have gained the qualitative idea of the organization, its internal control, or it might be the idea of the accounting policies and estimates being used by the organization. So such significant findings might also be communicated to those charged with governance. Significant risks identified and significant difficulties encountered during the audit. And these risks and difficulties can be the risk of the material misstatements, and the difficulty can be the delays, lack of information, or the restriction that is being imposed by the management. Some other matters are significant deficiencies in internal control. This also links to the previous one, which was the significant deficiencies or difficulties during the audit. Internal control or the management play a part in audit process. So any deficiency or weaknesses found in the internal control or management must be communicated in advance. Any uncorrected misstatements. Auditor during the audit might see misstatements in the financial statements. Auditor will communicate those misstatements to the management and those charged with governance. Now, management and those charged with governance have to correct those misstatements. If uncorrected, such misstatements must be communicated to those charged with governance. Any matter relating to accounting policies and estimates, if auditor is finding those policies and estimates to be inaccurate, then this must be communicated as they have their impact, high impact, because these are the areas of estimation. So these are the areas of uncertainty. Then auditor's independence. Mandatory in listed entities, auditors' independence must be ensured. So auditors, the firm or the engagement team's independence must be communicated to the management. And the documentation of communication, as we discussed earlier, all the communication must be done in written form. So all the written communication with those charged with governance must be properly documented in the audit files. So this was all a brief overview on ISA 260, communication with those charged with governance. Hope you understand it and like the video. Thank you.